The final item of business today is a member's business debate on motion number 5522 in the name of Jackie-Baillie on Dementia-Carers Voices. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Would those members who wish to speak in the debate please press the request to speak buttons as soon as possible. I now call on Jackie-Baillie to open the debate. 7 minutes, please, Ms Baillie.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and I think members will agree that there should be a welcome change of tone in the debate. And I do consider myself extremely privileged to lead this debate on dementia carers' voices. And let me start by acknowledging and welcoming the support that there is for this issue across all parties in this chamber, which is evidenced by the people remaining here this evening. I also very much want to welcome Tommy Whitelaw to the chamber today, because it is, of course, his work and his journey with his mother Joan that led to the Scottish Government providing funding for this very project. And this project recognises the central importance of the carer's voice in informing the future shape of services and recognising in that process the needs of carers too. Because members will remember, I think it was almost 2 years ago when Tommy started his tour of towns and cities across Scotland, walking much of the way, I suspect, to raise awareness of the impact of dementia on families and the difficult but vital role played by carers. Now, I never met Tommy's mum, but I know she wasn't defined by her dementia. She was a daughter, a sister, a wife, a friend, a workmate, a neighbour, a valued member of her community. And what I do know is that she was a much-loved mother and clearly a very special lady. But Tommy was at her side when she received her diagnosis of dementia. But, you know, they went home without support. And at a later stage of her condition, they were told, do you know, there's not much more we can do, and it's time to consider residential care. Now, for much of their journey in dealing with dementia, they didn't have access to that wide range of support. And certainly there was very little support for Tommy himself to help with that feeling of isolation, that loneliness that he felt as a carer, and I know is felt by carers in my own constituency, as it will be across Scotland. But that experience that he had, despite the strategies of successive governments that have been put in place, despite the much-lauded carer strategies or dementia strategies, that experience of Tommy and Joan is still experienced by others. We know that from the stories Tommy collected and continues to collect, and that these are at the very heart and foundation of the Dementia Carer Voices project. So something isn't working well at a local level. There is a postcode lottery of care. Some of it, gaps in health provision. Some of it, differences in services between local authority areas. But you know, irrespective of where the problem lies, the challenge for us in this chamber is to ensure that the best standard of care possible is provided wherever you live in the country. And you know, that's where I think Dementia Carers Voices will not just be helpful, but will be extremely useful for the government, because the project will use the stories that Tommy's collected on his journey to shape thinking about services, which I hope the government will take and use, to highlight the role and importance of carers, which I know is something that this chamber recognises and shares. But it will also take those stories to consider how we empower carers by using the Charter of Rights for people with dementia. And I know when I look around, I think virtually everybody in this chamber signed up to that, but it's not yet real. So we need to make sure that the isolation and loneliness that Tommy felt isn't felt by others, that there is a much better understanding of dementia and the carer's journey amongst health and social care professionals. And there are helpfully already important messages emerging that I think we should learn from now, rather than simply waiting to the end of the project. And some of the messages include, you know, we don't ask about the person inside the dementia. Yet actually, if we are to provide the best possible person-centred care, we need to know about their lives. We need to know about the things they like and they don't like. We need to know about them as people, as individuals, so that we can put that individual very much at the centre of their care. We know as well, because carers tell us, there isn't consistency of care staff, and yet we know the familiarity, the routine is so important to somebody with dementia. We heard a story of a carer, I think she was up in the Highlands, where there were 104 perhaps different care staff, in a very short space of time. That's not the way we want to be treating people with dementia. We also find from the project experiences suggesting the need for a friend, somebody you can talk to, because they've been there before as a carer. That's something that's quite simple. And of course, above all, the whole question of awareness. Let me just give you a couple of quotes, Presiding Officer, where carers were describing to Tommy what the issue was for them about becoming aware of services and being able to access services. One said, "It's like trying to crack a secret code." Another said, "It's like trying to break MI5. Now, that shouldn't be the case. We should be much more engaged in providing information to people. Another person said as well, "I know now that help is there, but you have to know where to look. No one comes to you with information or instructions." And some of that is easy to resolve. Now, I very much welcome, Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government's guarantee of at least a year's worth of post-diagnostic support. I think that will be helpful in changing the landscape. It has huge potential to assist people. It has huge potential to prevent carers from falling into crisis situations. But let me just say, it would be, I think, really important if the Minister could signal that implementation would be across all care home settings, including care homes and continuing care, because there are equally people, 86,000 of them, already diagnosed, that might not have access to that kind of support. And I would strongly urge the Minister to ensure that they are included too. Presiding Officer, in coming to a conclusion, let me just say, we all recognise the importance of carers in this chamber. We all recognise the amount they save the state. There are good strategies in place, but it is evident from the experience of Tommy on his tour that we need to do so much more. And can I finally commend Tommy's journey to the chamber, because what he's done is critically important in informing us about what's truly happening out there, and let's use his journey as a driver for change. Thank you.
Many, many thanks. I now call on Fiona MacLeod to be followed by Nanette Milne. 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's traditional to thank and congratulate the member, Jackie-Baillie, on bringing this important issue to the Chamber. And in doing that, I would also like to list a few personal thanks of my own. I want to thank the Bearsden Resource Centre of Alzheimer's Scotland. On a personal level, their staff have supported me in my journey as a carer, but also their carers group, which they hold on a Tuesday evening, is incredibly important to my constituents. I also want to thank Tommy Whitelaw, because his journey has very much reflected mine. I'm going to try really hard here not to cry, because the first 2 times I met Tommy, he did move me to tears when he came to Parliament in 2011 to bring his letters that he'd collected on his journey to present to Nicola Sturgeon, who was the then Cabinet Secretary for Health. I ended up in a toilet because I'd got quite upset. And on the second meeting, when Tommy came along just a few weeks later to talk to my local Carers Link group at their AGM, again, I ended up in a toilet, because it is an incredibly difficult thing to read these letters and just understand sometimes the very difficult journey that carers of people with dementia go on. I have to say, I think my getting very upset at the time was also the fact that I was at that point in a very difficult place in my personal journey as a carer, which is no longer the case. My third meeting was much more joyous with Tommy, and it was in Bellahouston Park, when Chris Rodden, who works for the Bearsden Resource Centre of Alzheimer's Scotland, had organised a sponsored walk, and Rona, my Dalmatian, and I went along, and we had a nice day out. So these thanks are very personal from me, but it's also, as the MSP for Strathkelvin and Bearsden, Looking after and supporting carers of people with dementia is incredibly important. By 2035, it's estimated that those aged 75 and above in Strathkelvin and Bearsden will rise by 88%, from 9,000 today to over 17,000. And when we learn that people aged over 75, 6% are likely to have dementia, but that those in their late 80s, 20% are likely to have dementia, then I think it's clear that for my role as an MSP in my constituency, there's going to be a lot of people caring for a lot of people with dementia. So that support for carers is absolutely vital, because when you're the carer of someone with dementia, you are often that person's voice, because you are the one that can delve inside and remember what it is that they would want if they could still tell people what it was. And Carers Link in my constituency, who supported me as a carer, but also had the courage to employ me as a peer support worker for 9 months. And Carers Link actually support 932 carers. It's a lot of people that they're supporting. But in recent years, they've realised that it's now 44% of those carers are carers looking after someone with dementia. So we can see the rising numbers already in my constituency. And I want to highlight particularly Carers Link's Day Cafe, where people who are caring for folk with dementia can come together on a monthly basis and get that support from each other and also learn from each other's journey. And in concluding, I'd like to just make one suggestion, which I think I have made before in the Chamber on debates on dementia carers, and that is we talk about hopefully having a card that young carers can have, because it's often very difficult for a young carer to be recognised as such. And I would make a plea again for a dementia carers card, because no matter how many times I turned up, especially in accident emergency, waving my power of attorney, I was not always recognised as the voice of the person there who couldn't answer for themselves, especially in an accident emergency situation. And I think a wee card that says, "I'm caring for this person with dementia," would perhaps give us a wee bit more access to health professionals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call on Nanette Milne to be followed by John Pentland.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I too would like to congratulate Jackie-Baillie on securing debating time for this important issue, and to commend Irene Oldfather for the immense amount of work she did as a member of this Parliament to raise awareness of dementia, and for her continuing commitment to all those who live with dementia and their carers in her new role with the Health and Social Care Alliance as Programme Director of the Dementia Carer Voices project. Whilst preparing for this debate, I found myself travelling far back down memory lane to the days, which must now be more than 60 years ago, when my granny stayed with us for the last 2 years of her life. Granny was fondly described as being a bit dottled, treating me as one of her school pals, entertaining the family with her favourite songs from the past, and once embarrassing us hugely when she walked into the house where she had lived as a child and told the current occupant in no uncertain terms that she had no business being there. I remember the funnier instance of Granny's final years, but I was quite unaware of the stress that her dementia caused to my parents, particularly my mother, who had to cope with regularly soiled bedding and clothes at a time when easy care materials and washing machines weren't available, whilst trying to keep Granny happily entertained and safe. This included making copious amounts of tea and snacks for the many visits from her large family, most of whom were quite content to just sit and chat, leaving Mum to do all the work. And this all against a background of very little sleep, because Granny regularly got up at night to collect her young laddies from school, and to cope with this, my mother slept with her with the bedroom key hidden under her pillow. I don't remember where Dad slept, but probably on a sofa in the living room, and all this for 2 whole years. In those days, there were no recognition of carers, no organisations to give support or advice, just the occasional chastisement of some family members by the GP, who recognised that my mother's own health was suffering from hard work, sleeplessness and lack of practical support. Thankfully, things are improving for carers, but there are still many people in Scotland looking after their loved ones with dementia without recognition or proper support, and that is why projects like Dementia Carers Voices are so important, because they raise awareness of the impact of dementia on the families affected by it. and the difficult but vital role played by the carers of the 86,000 people currently living with dementia. That figure is already up from 72,000 2 years ago and is set to double over the next 25 years as the population gets older. The unremitting commitment by Alzheimer's Scotland and the cross-party group led by Irene Oldfather when she was an MSP to help people with dementia and their carers led to the development of a Charter of Rights for these people, which was followed by the Dementia Strategy published by the Scottish Government in 2010. This recognised the need for quality support and information to be made available immediately after diagnosis and for better understanding of dementia by health and social care professionals in both hospital and community settings, with better planning for discharge back into the community aimed at delaying the need for residential care through improved home care and support. As we all know from our work locally, 3 years on, there are still many people who are not receiving the community support they need and are entitled to, with delayed assessments and unreliable provision of home care. And we all hope that the developing integration of adult health and social care will improve the situation for those not adequately provided for. The efforts of Tommy Whitelaw, following the death of his mother from dementia, has built up a large body of evidence from people who have cared for relatives with dementia, illustrating the problems they have faced, from isolation, the emotional roller coaster of the caring experience, to health, housing and financial worries. And his work has led to a recognition of the importance of the carer voice in informing future service provision and in empowering carers themselves. And like Jackie-Baillie, I sincerely congratulate him. If the project leads to a better understanding of dementia and its related issues among health and social care professionals, if it can lead to an increased awareness of carer rights, better support and information on sources of help, and less isolation of carers, then it will have been very worthwhile indeed. I commend the project and Jackie-Baillie for bringing it to our notice this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before I call John Pentland, I am minded, due to the number of members still wishing to speak in the debate, to accept a motion under Rule 8.14.3 that the debate be extended by up to 30 minutes. Ms Bailey?
Presiding officer.
Thank you very much. The question is that the debate be extended by up to 30 minutes. Are we all agreed? We are. The motion is therefore agreed to, and I now call on John Pentland.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The statistics about dementia only tell part of the story. We also need to hear the personal experiences of those with dementia and their carers and families who support them. That's why this project is so valuable, and why I'd like to thank Jackie-Baillie for bringing this motion to Parliament, and why my thanks go to Tommy Whitelaw, the Dementia Carer Voices Project champion, and others who provide a platform for carers' views for the work they are doing. I recently met people with dementia and their carers in my constituency when I attended the Living Well and Dementia Cafe, which meets monthly at Motherwell Football Club's Fir Park Stadium, with the aim of raising awareness of dementia in the community. It's a fantastic service which provides a regular meeting point for people with dementia and Alzheimer's and their carers to meet with the healthcare professionals and stakeholders in dementia care to discuss any concerns that they may have. I was struck by the activity that the cafe brings to the community. There was a vibrancy during that meeting which I'm certain made people feel welcome, comforted and understood. No one was excluded, and staff did an excellent job in providing reassurance and advice to all 60 people who attended. This service is invaluable to our community, and with the increasing prevalence of Alzheimer's and dementia, it's vital that people do not feel alone in their concerns, and we need much more such services. Hearing what my constituencies have to say makes it very clear to me that we need to further enhance the services that are available to support them, and to look carefully at the Scottish Government policy on the development of those services. Carers, whether for those with dementia or other reasons, contribute an enormous amount to society, and of course that contribution is not easy to measure or generally recognised by the bean counters, by the statisticians and the economists. And it's only when we look at what it would cost the state to provide the support that they give for the Scottish economy, about £10 billion, do we realise just how much we are in their debt. Now, that is something that the health services and central and local government should take on board in their policy making and activities. Dementia and other carers deserve a network of support that can address their specific needs, whether day to day or in a crisis. They need to know how and where to get help, and that help needs to be available when it is needed. They need support in maintaining their own health under the pressures from caring, and they need support as they struggle with fuel and food poverty. The 250,000 carers who work need the understanding and support of employers so that they can combine work with their caring responsibilities. And young carers need the support of our schools and colleges as they combine study with their caring role. Now, I welcome this project. It's contributing to the meeting that they need through visits, talks, publications and social and other media. And this project also makes clear the need for those providing services to know more about the person with dementia, and the linked need to have consistency in who provides those services. So I thank the project for delivering these messages and sincerely hope that they are taken on board. Thank you.
Many thanks. I now call on Roderick Campbell to be followed by Jim Hume.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. May I begin by congratulating Jackie-Baillie on securing a member's business slot to bring this important topic to the Chamber, and to pay tribute to the contributions made so far by Fiona MacLeod in particular, and the recent contribution from John Pentland. We cannot underestimate the size of the challenge that Scotland faces from dementia. As Jackie-Baillie has pointed out, it's anticipated that the number of people suffering will double in the next 25 years. And Alzheimer's Scotland predict that by 2031 there will be 127,000 dementia sufferers in Scotland. Any mental illness is challenging to deal with, not least for the sufferers, but also for those who care for them. And that means doctors, husbands, wives, children, parents, partners, friends or neighbours. But dementia, given its prevalence among the elderly in particular, proposes a whole extra set of difficulties, both for sufferers and carers. Presiding Officer, carers are the unpaid army of volunteers, without whom we simply could not ensure that those with dementia get the support and attention they deserve. Testimony to that were the diverse stories and experiences we learned about when people from all walks of society came to speak in the Carers Parliament a few months ago, including some from my own constituency, who've sacrificed careers to the greater need of looking after family members. And my own 92-year-old mother is a dementia sufferer who is able to live at home only with my 90-year-old father because of the network of support which he has from both great care assistants and family members. This is a real issue for all classes of people and all backgrounds. Dementia knows no boundaries, and I would like to pay tribute to the work of volunteers like Tommy Whitelaw and the new project, the Dementia-Carers project, and also recognise that for our old father there is a major contribution to be made out with this Parliament, and I wish her well. It's clear that in providing the services and frameworks that our health service and unpaid carers need to cope with the effects of dementia has been a priority for the Scottish Government since 2007, but much more needs to be done. As Alzheimer's Scotland had referred to in a recent report, there is a need to ensure that service provision is consistent at all times, in all places, not least in terms of increasing availability of specialist day care suited to dementia sufferers, but also in increasing training for professional home carers and allowing them more contact hours with dementia patients, and also in improving respite options, amongst other things. If we can build on these areas, we'll be improving the lot, not only of sufferers, but also of the spouses, children, friends and neighbours who care for their loved ones. Turning a bit more to respite, this is a key issue for carers, and we need to be clear that respite care does not have to mean sending a sufferer to a care home overnight. Respite can be delivered in the home environment too, and we need to accept that dementia sufferers and carers often very much appreciate the relatively low levels of stress involved when respite is delivered in a familiar setting with minimal disruption to the lives of sufferers and carers, something which is of paramount importance in dementia care. Respite outside of care homes accounted for only 2.2% of all respite nights for the over 65s in Fife in 2006-07. That's a very low figure, and there certainly seems to be scope for replication of the much higher figures in East Ayrshire in the Clyde, where approximately a quarter and a fifth of all respite nights, respectively, are provided outside care homes. So I hope we can do more to kind of end that kind of lottery across the country. I hope that the Scottish Government's next dementia strategy, which will apply for the next 3 years until 2016, is as innovative as the last one. We need to maintain a dialogue with all carers, such as Tommy, with patients and stakeholders, such as Alzheimer's Scotland and Dementia Scotland, and others such as Professor June Andrews, who I was fortunate to visit at her base in Stirling University a couple of months ago. We need to build on things such as the strong diagnosis rate in Scotland, which is the highest in the UK, and we need to take on board the comments that Jackie-Baillie has made in relation to that. And we need to meet the important heat target for post-diagnostic support. From the draft strategy, I'm convinced the Scottish Government recognise the importance of the problem, but amongst the whole problem, let's not forget, in particular, the role of the carers. Without carers, the consequences for the wider society would be grave indeed. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. I now call on Jim Hume to be followed by Claire Baker.
Yes, thank you. I too congratulate Jackie-Baillie on securing this evening's debate and welcome the opportunity to highlight the extraordinary work of Scotland's dementia carers. Presiding Officer, there can be no doubt that the whole of Scotland owes a debt of gratitude to our carers. Daily, they are selflessly caring for the most vulnerable members of our society for reasons of duty and love. It's estimated that Scotland's 657,300 carers provide annual savings of £10.3 billion. Of course, not all of those carers are providing support for dementia sufferers, but dementia is a dreadful illness whose grip extends far beyond the sufferer afflicted by the disease. This is an illness which tragically robs the family of the person they know and love long before death actually occurs. This makes it uniquely cruel as an illness in that your loved one is still physically there, but mentally is no longer able to engage with you as they once could. I too know my father suffered, and it wasn't until my mother passed away after a short battle with cancer that I realised she'd been hiding his early dementia. That's what I think they mean by the stigma of dementia. Dementia must always be viewed beyond the mental illness which attacks the memory of the sufferer, but also as the illness which affects their loved ones. In this environment, your heart breaks while you watch your loved one deteriorate, and your life is suspended while you act as their carer. That's the lives of tens of thousands of people in Scotland who find themselves in this position on a daily basis. Up until the tragic death of his mother last year, Tommy Whitelaw was one of those carers. I want to pay my own tribute to him tonight. Tommy is an inspiration. Frankly, I don't know where he found his energy and drive to do his campaigning while caring for his mother, but I am really glad that he did. I had been aware of Tommy's exploits from media coverage, but I didn't have the pleasure of meeting him until January this year, thanks to my old colleague and friend, Irene Oldfather. He told me of his work with Alzheimer's Scotland to tour the country and collect letters from other carers, the short film he had made to raise awareness of dementia, and his role as a carer for Joan. I was so moved by his experiences that I asked him to speak at my regional conference for Lib Dems last month. He's doing an incredible job in raising the public awareness of dementia, and I was honoured he could join me at that conference. And I'm also pleased that he's managed to join us all in the gallery this evening. The publication of a dedicated strategy for carers by the Scottish Government in 2010 was a good start, particularly as local authorities and the third sector had the opportunity to inform that strategy. The Carers Parliament have been outstanding forums to discuss and raise awareness of the great job being done by carers, but we must not be complacent and should be striving to build upon this basis of good work to further strengthen the support network afforded to all carers. Presiding Officer, I'm glad we had a motion to extend time to this debate. That's quite a rare occasion, but it just emphasises the importance of this debate. I thought I'd end my contribution tonight not with my own words, but with Tommy's words from an interview he did with the Daily Record as he embarked upon his tour 2 years ago. When asked to describe the life of a full-time carer, he said, "It's hard emotionally, mentally and financially, and it can leave me feeling lonely." He speaks there not just for himself, but for all who have cared for parents and loved ones. Let us all work towards a Scotland where no carer feels lonely.
Many thanks. And I call on Claire Baker to be followed by Mark MacDonald.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to speak in this evening's debate and congratulate Jackie-Baillie on bringing forward this issue. Dementia is a condition which impacts on so many families and individuals across Scotland, and it's a condition which is only expected to increase among the Scottish population. These demands will impact on our health and social care services, and we must ensure we develop services that will respond to these rising demands. I met with RCN clinical leaders from Fife a few weeks ago in Parliament, and they identified the growth in more complex health needs as being one of the real pressures facing the health service. But of course, it is not just about our health service or the structures or frameworks we create to work within. What struck me in reading the briefing from Health and Social Care Alliance Scotland was the human response to dementia, how people are treated, how they're understood, how they're supported and how they are talked to. We can get the structures right, but how people are treated will be the key to a successful dementia strategy. And carers are at the heart of this. With an estimated 8,000 to 6,000 people in Scotland living with dementia, there's an army of carers out there looking after their loved ones, an experience which can be difficult, which can be challenging, which is certainly exhausting, and is also an act of love and care. My family, like many across Scotland, have had the experience of caring for a family member at home with Alzheimer's. And nobody expects a medal or a recognition for any of this. Carers care from a sense of duty because it seems like the right thing to do, from a feeling that no one else will do it or worries that no one else will be able to provide the kind of care that they can personally provide for 100 different reasons, but at the heart of it is because they love the person they care for, and it takes over the carer's life. It is a 24-hour-a-day job. And someone may become a carer over a period of time as their spouse or parent, for example, gradually becomes more dependent. But it could also be a sudden change where a decision has to be taken about care and a relative then moves into a family home. And some people make the decision to be a carer, while for others, particularly spouses, it can be a role that they just start to increasingly fulfil. Fife Carers Centre in Kirkcaldy offers support and advice, and the number they are supporting is increasing all the time, and the work that they do should be recognised. Carers often worry about the person they care for, about the level of care they're able to provide, the treatment they'll get from others, the effect this can have on the wider family, and also what's going to happen in the future. This responsibility places a burden on carers, affecting their own physical, mental and emotional health. And in addition, carers often find added pressure on their finances, sometimes from extra expenses and sometimes from their income being reduced as they need to reduce their working hours or give up work altogether. So these are some of the reasons why Dementia Carer Voices is so valued, and I welcome the extent to which the debate has recognised the work of Tommy Whitelaw, who has been raising awareness of the impact of dementia on families. The collection of life stories demonstrate that carers of people with dementia often feel isolated, and there is insufficient recognition of the complex issues they have to deal with, from legal to financial to health and housing. These letters and stories are a valuable resource which should be used to inform future policy and service provision. One of the identified outcomes of the project is to gather information which will support family and person-centred approaches to health and social care. And when you look through the briefing, it's clear why that is important. Lots of the carers' comments are focused on not being recognised as a person, a feeling that the person inside the dementia is forgotten, as well as a call for a greater recognition of the carer role among health and social care professionals. One carer describing it as the need to recognise the value of the trust that the person has in the carer. These letters that have been collected are powerful and are testimony to the valuable work that carers do across Scotland. But they are also about the human experience. Being a carer is not a job, it is about being part of a family, and the letters demonstrate that while people do it for the best of reasons, they can't and shouldn't have to do it alone.
Many thanks. Now call on Mark MacDonald to be followed by Dr Murray.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and can I add my congratulations to those of others to Jackie-Baillie for bringing this debate to the Chamber. As members will be aware, it is an issue close to my heart, of which a little bit more later, but I also am co-convener of the cross-party groups on both carers and dementia as well, so I have that particular interest as well. I met Tommy Whitelaw in June 2011, actually on my birthday, in Aberdeen's St Mary's Cathedral. It was quite a birthday present, Tommy, and it's good to see him here in Parliament today. And while we were there, we spoke about his campaign, and I shared with him my own family's experience. My mother was carer to my grandparents, and my grandmother had dementia for 11 years and lived with my mother in my mother's home for 6 of those years, along with my grandfather, although he passed away in 2010, and my grandmother herself passed away in October 2011. And I agree with Jim Hume that dementia is a horrible, cruel illness. I've often said that my view is that dementia is an illness that kills a person from the inside out, in the sense that what you're left with is essentially a shell that looks very much like the person that you know and love, but that the person that you know and love, the essence that made them the person you know and love, has long since disappeared, although there are occasional glimmers that do reappear, and that was the case with my grandmother. And one of the things that was interesting, Presiding Officer, I'm just going to deviate from what I've written here, but one of the things that was interesting with my grandmother was the way that she would react to my children and my brother's children and her great-grandchildren. She seemed to have an enormous affinity for babies and small children, and always would light up when they came to visit her, compared to the fact that she would treat my mother and her siblings as strangers, despite the fact that these were her children that she had raised, and I always was struck by that when visiting my grandmother. But I saw firsthand, Presiding Officer, the many difficulties and issues that were faced by my mother as a carer, the difficulties in the initial stages where she was trying to juggle continuing to sustain employment with her caring responsibilities, and eventually she had to leave her job and focus fully on caring. The difficulties that are created by the pittance that carers receive as a carer's allowance. And Jim Hume mentioned the £10.3 billion annual savings that the state accrues as a result of carers doing what they do, and yet DWP deem this not to be a job and pay an absolute pittance by way of the carers' allowance. And I think that is extremely regrettable, and certainly doesn't help carers to do the very tough job that they do. But my mother received great support from Alzheimer's Scotland throughout the process, and she and my family remain grateful for this. And indeed, my mum is currently fundraising for Alzheimer's Scotland, despite the fact that my grandmother has not been with us for over a year, because we recognise the work that they deliver across our communities. And Jackie-Baillie mentioned a carer and suggested it was a carer in the Highlands who had 104 carers. And using my Poirot-esque powers of deduction, I concluded that she was referring to Jeanette Maitland of Kingswells in Aberdeen, who had 106 carers visiting to tend to her husband. And I actually met Mrs Maitland at a carers event in Aberdeen and visited her at her home to discuss these very issues prior to them becoming public. So it jogged my memory when Jackie-Baillie was talking about that. And I think that the issue that Jeanette Maitland's issue, I think, highlights the importance of a continuity of care, particularly for individuals with dementia, because one of the things that was most noticeable is how they react to familiarity, and the familiarity of having the same person coming to visit them. And when there is constant change, it upsets them. It upsets individuals with dementia, and that's something that needs to be avoided. And the last thing I would say, Presiding Officer, is that it is important to ensure that the adequate and appropriate support is in place for carers. And we note from the briefing that was provided, 3/4 of carers say their health is worse because of their caring responsibilities. I think we have to ensure that we address that. Otherwise, the people who are today's carers will become the people who are tomorrow's cared for.
Many thanks. Now call on Dr Elaine Murray to be followed by Sandra White.
Thanks very much, Presiding Officer. Can I also congratulate Jackie-Baillie for bringing this motion to the Chamber's attention, and also associate myself with the comments of other members with regard to both Irene Oldfather and Tommy Whitelaw. We have significant numbers of people in Scotland now living with dementia, and that number increasing to likely to increase. and at the same time, obviously, significant numbers of carers providing vital services to their loved ones, and also, as others have said, saving the taxpayer significant sums of money in terms of their care. Now, I come from a fairly long-lived family. My grandmother was 95 when she died, and her mother was 93. And uncommonly for somebody of my age, I'm still lucky enough to have both of my parents alive, very much so alive. But I'm also even more fortunate in that I've never actually had to suffer that particular pain of watching a loved one succumb to dementia, to lose the person that you love, but still at the same time having to care for the person that they have become. I mean, touch wood, of course, that I've not had to suffer that. And I take my hat off to the experience of others around this chamber who have actually had to go through that. And it seems tragic that people who are suffering that bereavement actually are finding difficulty in finding out both about the condition for which the loved one is suffering or about the services available to help them. In October last year, I was honoured to accept an invitation to open Alzheimer's Scotland's Dementia Resource Centre in Gordon Street in Dumfries, along with Mr and Mrs Crouch, a dementia sufferer and her carer. Mr Crouch described to me what the centre was able to offer to them and how it gave him some respite, while at the same time his wife enjoyed and benefited from the services it offers, which are a day centre, access to a dementia advisor for carers, and also an award-winning fortnightly musical minds group, which has been so successful that it has had to move out to larger premises, and also has recently set up a similar programme in Moffat. And also for those who prefer sport to music, there's a monthly football reminiscence club, members of which recently visited Alzheimer's Scotland's national resource at Hampden, along with similar clubs from across Scotland. The centre also is decorated to a very high standard, both with objects and photographs which are designed to stimulate memory. And in fact, my grandparents had possessed some of the objects when I was a little girl, so it certainly stimulated my memory. It included a stone hot water bottle, which when I was a wee girl we always referred to as the pig, I think because it was called, I don't know if that was a particular Fife expression, but they had one of those and I was very excited to see it. I think there's a number of ways in which people with dementia and their carers can be supported, and some of those are fun ways, like sport, like culture. They're ways in which people's lives can be uplifted, even during the suffering of this dreadful disease. Members present in the Chamber also may have recently visited the exhibition of quilts, entitled Yes We Can Together, in the garden lobby at the end of last month, exhibited by my constituent Anne Hill. Anne is Alzheimer's Scotland's quilter in residence. And what she does is create quilts for people suffering from dementia after speaking to them and their carers about the things which were important in their earlier lives. So the quilts have a variety of different themes to them, but those mean very special things to the person, a dementia sufferer who receives the quilt, and help the person by stimulating the memory and reminding them of the things that they love. And Anne is actually encouraging other quilters to take up our Hampden Challenge, which is to cover the pitch at Hampden in these quilts during Dementia Awareness Week in June. And if anybody is handy with a needle, I would encourage them maybe to help Anne in her efforts. Many older people, we know, probably all older people, are terrified that they may succumb to dementia. Often they are more frightened in old age of that condition than of many of the other killer diseases which are prevalent in Scotland. And it struck me when speaking at the event in October that we don't actually talk about dementia enough. There used to be similar attitudes to cancer, where people wouldn't refer to cancer. We fortunately are over that, but we need to take the same view about dementia. We need to talk about dementia, about how it can be treated both medically and therapeutically, about how carers can be supported. And I think the events like discussing this here in Parliament today do actually help to raise the profile of dementia and to hopefully to make people actually talk about it.
Thank you very much. I now call on Sandra White, after which we move to the Minister for the closing speech.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Can I thank Jackie-Baillie for securing this debate and pay tribute to Tommy Whitelaw and others who are in the gallery today, basically for his Tommy on Tour campaign, which was fantastic at raising awareness of just exactly what dementia means, not just to, obviously, the sufferers, but the carers also, and the thousands of carers out there and organisations which put this to the front of the agenda. I had written down some words, but I think the best thing I can actually do is just hold up the leaflet that Dementia Carer Voices, supporting rights in the carer voice. It basically tells you everything within this leaflet. And what I really, really like and admire about this organisation It is very much a grassroots organisation. It's from the bottom up. It is listening to the people who are at the coalface and not necessarily listening to the professionals which receive from the coalface. Now, they've mentioned various issues about the experience of carers, which certainly they do, with people writing back to them. They also mention the fact that we really need to have greater understanding, particularly within the professionals. They need more understanding. We've got the National Dementia Strategy, the right to dignity and respect. And I think Fiona MacLeod had raised that. But, you know, as Fiona says, when you are caring for someone with dementia, it's very difficult to get through the maze of all the, you know, the paperwork and the bureaucracy to find exactly what is right for you. And I know that the National Dementia Strategy is doing that, but I think we need to look at that and push it out more for professionals who actually are the ones that we would need to speak to and tackle. Mark MacDonald did mention the fact about the amount of money that carers receive each week, their benefits, and as Claire Baker said it and others, it's not about the money, obviously it isn't, but if you have a job or if you have a family and a couple of kids, obviously you've got to give that job up. You need something to support you, particularly with bills coming in and the increase in, you know, utility bills also. £58.45 is not a lot of money to keep you there, and in some cases obviously people can't take another job also. I know it's out with the scope, unfortunately, of this Parliament, but I do make the point that we need to look at that as well. As the convener of the cross-party group in older people, the issue of dementia has raised itself on numerous occasions, and Nanette Millen is a co-convener, as Jim was also. And I think we know very well that it is raised within the cross-party group on very many occasions. But there are so many fantastic organisations out there, like Alzheimer's, people like Tommy and others, who absolutely give their all to ensure that people who have dementia, that's put to the forefront. And we always look forward to the debates if someone comes along to give us advice on the best way that we can go forward. I think it's a fantastic opportunity, this debate today, not just to listen to, obviously, the individual cases. And in my case, it was my mum that we didn't realise she had dementia until my dad died. And then we went to visit her, we would find that the sink was overflowing, the pot was burned on the gas, things like that. And obviously what had happened is, in Jim's case, my dad had protected my mum from anyone knowing that they had dementia. Fortunately, coming from a big family, we were able to have someone there to stay every night. But that's not the case for everyone until she became, you know, obviously so ill that we couldn't have her in our own house, and we had to, unfortunately, put her into a care home. And I think that's where the personal experience that come through the carers' voices actually means so much. It is about the grassroots. It is about the people who have suffered. And, well, we talk about suffering, but as Nanette Millen says, sometimes there is some laughable moments. There's sometimes where there's a great joy when they hear music that they remember. And as Mark McMillan said, in kids, and in my mother's case, it was always the grandkids and the great-grandkids also, although at times I was usually a sister and I wasn't to go out because I was a bad thing or something like that. Obviously something my auntie had done in a past life. But for us, it was a joyful time as well, sometimes being sad. So I really commend what you've did here today and the debate that Jackie's brought forward. And as I say again, to have a grassroots organisation talking upwards to professionals, to me that's the best way forward. And thank you very much, Jackie, for bringing it along.
Many thanks. I now call on the Minister, Michael Matheson, to close the debate. On behalf of the Government, Minister, 7 minutes or thereby, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Can I, like others, congratulate Jackie-Baillie in securing time for this important debate, and also to thank all of those members who have stayed and contributed to what I think has been a very powerful debate, and particularly those who shared some of their own experience with their loved ones and the impact that dementia has had on their own family. I, like others, would also like to pay tribute to Tommy Whitelaw, having met with him and following him on Twitter and the work that he does, and which I think is extremely important, along with the work he's now doing, of course, with the Health and Social Care Alliance and the Dementia Voices project, and also the work that was undertaken by Alzheimer's Scotland's National Dementia Carers Action Network. I think what's particularly unique about this whole issue around Carers Voices, the Carers Voices project, was highlighted by Sandra White in her contribution in seeking to capture those moments of experience that come from the carers of those who are looking after someone with dementia, which can be an extremely powerful tool and helping both us, who as policymakers and others, in understanding the challenges and the issues that need to be addressed, and helping to support individuals who have dementia and also their carers. And I think it's a very valuable project which will help to shape how we do things in the future, and have an opportunity to make sure that we are well aware of what at times can be an intensely challenging experience for carers who are living with someone with dementia, and supporting them as they go through their illness. Presiding Officer, a number of members have made reference to the increasing challenge which we face as a society with the demographic shift that is taking place within Scotland, as is the case with many other Western European countries, and the likelihood that that will see an increasing number of individuals within our population who have dementia. And it's extremely important we recognise that it's a challenge which is here and now, and it's a challenge which we will also face in the years to come, and that we take the appropriate action now to address the challenges now and into the future. And that's why the National Dementia Strategy for Scotland was extremely important in starting that process in a strategic way. And it focused on meeting two specific challenges. And we have made good progress on these areas. One of the key challenges was to meet the diagnostic test for individuals with dementia, and Scotland has met that challenge extremely well. It's outperformed England, Wales in this key area, but we need to make sure that we build on that in moving forward. The other key challenge was around implementing the standards of care for dementia in Scotland, and the skills framework promoting excellence. Both are underpinned by the key principle that family carers should be equal partners in care. And we've supported work being taken forward by Alzheimer's Scotland in the appointment of the dementia nurse consultants to boards across Scotland. We now have 300 dementia champions trained, and there are more to come. But we also know that it's important that those professionals who work within the healthcare and social care setting recognise the role that family carers can actually have in helping to support a loved one when they at times may require a period in hospital or in another care setting. And also from next month, there is our national guarantee that everyone diagnosed with dementia from April will receive a minimum of 1 year's worth of post-diagnostic support coordinated by a named worker, which is very much about trying to do what Jackie-Baillie highlighted about, trying to make sure that we develop comprehensive, person-centred plans for ongoing and future care for individuals, and develop them in a way which is suited to that particular situation. What I can say is that that guarantee is a post-diagnostic guarantee and is not dependent upon setting, whether it be in a social care setting or whether they be within their own home setting. We're also going to be taking forward work with the Life Changes Trust as they administer grants from overall from the Big Lottery Fund to the tune of some £25 million from this year for initiatives which will benefit people with dementia, their families and their carers. As members have referred to, we are presently in the process of looking at bringing forward the second phase of our National Dementia Strategy. We've had an engagement process which has allowed the whole sector to get involved in that particular process to express their views on how we should move forward. The paper proposes to build on and to consolidate on the progress that has been made to date as we move forward to 2016, including a need to make sure that we continue to upskill the workforce both in health and social care setting, but also to help to sustain performance in early diagnosis, to improve post-diagnostic support and to improve care in hospitals. And in all of these areas, and in more engaging and involving people with dementia, their families and their carers as equal partners in care. A number of members have made reference to carers' issues and some of the challenges which carers can often face, and particularly challenges that those who are carers for someone with dementia can also face. It's extremely important we continue to make sure that we do whatever we can to help to support the many challenges that carers can face. And some of the work we're taking forward is to try and make sure that we improve identification of carers, which can often be a challenge to them in getting access to the services and supports that might be able to assist them. Just the type of service that John Pentland referred to, which is available at Fir Park. But it's important that we make sure that they are skilled to allow them to do that. So we're funding NES and SSSC to do some work around care workforce development initiatives to help to support that. But one of the groups that is particularly important in acting as a gatekeeper to accessing these services is our general practitioners. We have taken forward a number of initiatives with them so far to help to assist with that. But for the first time in the General Medical Services contract agreement for 2013-14, there is now a very specific carers indicator included within that. And what that means is that GP practices in Scotland must have systems in place to identify carers and have a mechanism for referral onto services that can assist and support them. Fiona MacLeod raised the issue about the idea of a dementia card. We're obviously taking forward the young carers card, and I've got no doubt that that will develop into a carers card, which I think can help to address some of the issues that she mentioned. And John Pentland raised the issue around employment for carers. And one of the things we have to do is engage with the employment sector to make sure that they are actually recognising the role of carers and the value that they have in supporting them. That's something I've already started, and we're just about to appoint a project worker with Carers Scotland in order to take forward the employer's kite mark, which is about helping to make sure carers have, or employers have, carer-friendly policies in place. So there's certainly more we can do in this area, and I'm determined to make sure we do that alongside our Carers Rights Charter, the Carers Trainings Initiative, the funding of voluntary short break funds, and also, again this year, the Carers Parliament, which will take place in order to allow carers to come together. So I hope I can assure Jim Hume there is certainly no complacency on the part of the Government to try and continue the process that we have been taking forward over recent years to help to support carers and to work with those other organisations that have an important role in supporting carers. One other area I think is worth mentioning here tonight as well is the value that self-directed support can have for those carers and individuals with dementia. We ran a project through Alzheimer's Scotland in Ayrshire through self-directed support, and it proved to be very beneficial. Very often families and individuals finding ways and solutions which were best suited to them. And with the introduction of the self-directed support bill, I believe it gives an opportunity to build on that, which Alzheimer's Scotland are taking forward to make sure that more carers of individuals with dementia and sufferers themselves can benefit from self-directed support. The final point, Presiding Officer, is obviously as we move towards integration of health and social care. That provides us with a unique opportunity to make sure that we have services operating in a much more coordinated fashion and recognising the roles that carers have, and to make sure that services are much more aligned to individuals' needs rather than organisations' needs. And I've got no doubt that as we move that forward, it will help to provide greater certainty across the country in how services are delivered in a much more joined-up fashion. And drawing my remarks to a close, Presiding Officer, again, I congratulate Jackie-Baillie in bringing this debate to the Chamber. This is an area which, as a government, we see as a key priority, and we will continue to build on the progress that is being made, or has been made over recent years, to make sure that we continue with the momentum that's been gained in order to make sure that it makes a real difference to the lives of those who have dementia and their carers in Scotland.
Many, many thanks. Thank you all for your contributions to this important debate, and I now close this meeting of Parliament.